So one of the reoccurring themes on PLP Talks is the role of the modern bike shop and how a bike shop today to succeed can no longer be just a purveyor of goods and services. They've got to do more. They've got to be a community player, an advocate. In this episode of PLP Talks, we're going to talk with someone that knows this intimately, Tobie DePauw. At his time at the helm of a small bike shop in DeKalb, Illinois, he was able to create a community around the bike shop, branch out into advocacy and events. At one point, this shop in DeKalb, Illinois was selling more Surleys than the entire country of Germany. So this episode of PLP Talks is full of interesting conversation around the role of the modern bike shop. So this episode of PLP Talks, like all the other episodes, is supported by listeners and viewers just like you guys. So if you like this content, if you find it interesting, or if it shaped how you think about things in some way, consider being a financial supporter, and all that information is in the description below in the YouTube video or in the show notes if you're listening to this in podcast form. This episode is also supported by the Ramble Ride. Check them out at ramblerides.com. Imagine all the things you love about bikepacking: the challenge of carrying your gear, the amazing remote and scenic routes, and the camaraderie amongst friends at the end of the day, without the things you dislike about bikepacking: the planning, the logistics of carrying your food and having to cook. And you have the Ramble Ride. The Ramble Ride is a unique, semi-supported bikepacking experience. We got a chance to ride the Oregon one last year, and it was truly a stunning event. It took us on roads and places that we never knew existed. So if you're looking for a different kind of cycling event that is part challenge and all fun, then definitely check out the Ramble Ride at ramblerides.com. So with all that said, put on your earbuds, pretend like you're working at your desk. It's okay, we won't tell. And enjoy the show. Today's guest is super special, someone that we've known about and had the pleasure of meeting in person a couple of times. He's an industry veteran, a gravel provocateur. So welcome to the show, Tobie DePauw. Thanks for being on the show, Tobie.
Thanks, Russ. It's an honor. This is great.
So recently there was a Frostbike happen, which is kind of a dealer event that QBP puts on during the winter. It's where they showcase new bikes, but there's also training and teaching opportunities for dealers. And it sounded like you and Bobby Wintle put on an interesting presentation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were invited last summer to do this Frostbike presentation that the official title was called How the Middle of Nowhere Can Be the Center of Everything, which is just based on the fact that the places where we were doing our business, where I was in DeKalb, Illinois, and where Bobby is in Stillwater, are not cycling meccas. You know, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. But despite that, we were able to grow interesting businesses and draw the people to those places to ride and ultimately buy some bikes. And so we took that concept and had a little fun with it. We ended up calling it Bob and Tobe's Excellent Adventure, and had a Bill and Ted theme the whole time. And so we really enjoyed sharing stories about kind of the stuff that we did to draw people to our places, to do interesting things with our business, carry unique products, and kind of the ethos that made us people-centric businesses. As opposed to product-centric businesses. And it was a lot of fun. We had about 100 dealers in attendance. We had some great conversations around the topic, around the seminar. And I think some of the takeaways were just, trying to remind bike dealers to be nice and to take care of people, and, really novel concepts like that. And then a big part of it was encouraging retailers to work together. We are not the competition. We should be working together. We have a lot more to learn from each other than we think. And so we encourage dealers to kind of roundtable amongst themselves and brainstorm good ideas, share what's working for them, what's their biggest challenge at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really productive. Dealers left with new friends, new contacts, and ultimately a lot of the lasting relationships I have in the bike industry are from conversations like that, at seminars like that. So it was a real pleasure for me to foster that, to host that kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. So for those that aren't familiar with the bike shop you were a part of in the past, North Central Cyclery, kind of paint the picture of how many people were there and what it was like, and kind of the things that you implemented to help it grow as I guess like a cycling hotspot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It blows my mind that you just called DeKalb, Illinois, a cycling hotspot. That's pretty amazing. If you've ever been there, it's really a blip on the map. It's cornfield country. It's a lot of big open squares, very little elevation change. And when I moved there, I was hired pretty much off the street to run the bike shop. I had no bike shop experience. I had met the owner who was buying the bike shop, and the previous owners to that bike shop had done some injustice to the community, and there was some bad blood there. And so we were kind of just building goodwill again. So starting at, I would say, less than zero. And when we came in, we had way too many brands in the store, and we had to go through the work of weeding out what we wanted to sell and who we did business well with well. And we were told at that point that given the population and kind of the demographic, that we could at most double the size of the shop. So that seemed like a good goal, and we went after that. And within 2 or 3 years, we had accomplished that. And around that same time, I had started pursuing the bikes that I liked kind of in the back. I had been ordering the parts that I liked that I couldn't sell to customers because people didn't know about them, or just wasn't what people were asking for. But in college, I fell in love with a Surly long haul trucker. That was my dream bike. When I saw that bike, I thought, boy, this is bike. There's no more bike than this bike. This is what I want. How could you want more than this? And so that was my first big bike that I built up when I started working at the bike shop. And it was sitting in the back, and people started asking about it. And so when we hit that kind of ceiling, I felt like we were just getting started. We started carrying more niche products. We were into Surly and Salsa as it was kind of going through its changes, and Brooks. We did a lot with Brooks, and at that time, Surly didn't have very many complete bikes. In fact, they only had one. And so what we would do is ordering frames, and sometimes we'd swap the parts from other bikes. Sometimes we'd build them up from scratch. And we were about 60 miles from Chicago, and we had 54, 56, 58 long-haul truckers, and people were driving out regularly to test ride those bikes. And it's novel to think about now. It's very funny, given they have so many models, and they're all complete. But at the time, it was a destination product. And so we had people coming from all over the place to test ride these bikes that you literally couldn't test ride. They did not come as complete bikes. And so that was kind of how the ball got started in the niche products. And we ended up doubling the business again, really with expanding to niche destination products, brands that were hard to find or hard to see, touch, test ride. And it was scary. It was in the moment, in those days and weeks, it didn't feel like we were making much difference. But looking back, it really did make a difference that we risked. We tried different brands, we tried different products, and then we built events around those products, and that was another big turning point that helped us establish DeKalb as a destination.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the events. What was the initial impetus? Was it to build community, or just to get to grow the potential customer base for these niche products?
There were a couple reasons. One of them, very selfish, was I was super busy and I wanted to do these gravel events, but I couldn't afford to get away for days and days to go do them. And so I thought, if I host one, I don't have to travel anywhere. And so that was the selfish, very simple, one simple reason. But the other thing was just, if you build it, they will come. There was this sense that a lot of people, Almanzo was paving the way at that time. Trans Iowa, Almanzo, Dirty Kanza, those were the stalwarts. And Chris Skogan really did amazing things on his website, told great stories, and inspired people to go start their own events. And that was really inspiring to me. And so we wanted to do that too. And we wanted, given that Illinois is not a very challenging place to ride, we wanted to be kind of the baby gravel race. We wanted the starter gravel race. We wanted something that was approachable. If you were just coming into the scene, we wanted something that you could imagine doing. And so our first gravel event was called the Gravel Metric. It was only 62, 64 miles. pretty informal. We promoted it through a couple of videos that we made with my good friend Seth, and those were highlights. We loved making those videos, and got hundreds and hundreds of people to come to DeKalb, Illinois to ride bikes. And the thing I'm most proud of in that whole scenario is we literally had people bring their moms to come ride the gravel race. Like, that was fantastic. It was, we had training rides leading up to it, and it was a family affair, and that was inspiring. We had people that hadn't really imagined themselves as endurance athletes come and give it a shot, and that was great. That made me feel good. And so from there, we did we had a cross race. We had a cross race for many years. We had a fat bike race called Blubber Bike that we put on 3 years. We canceled it the first 2, and then the third year was perfect, so we killed it. We just couldn't do any better. And then we had the Night Bison, which was a gravel race starting at sundown. That was a blast. That was always the most fun event that we had every year. And then the last event we kind of started was kind of the brainchild of Chad Ament, a good friend and mechanic of mine at the time. And he was riding out west in Western Illinois and kind of the Illinois Driftless, and found some amazing roads. And so we had an Illinois event with over 10,000 feet of climbing and just over 100 miles. And so those are all, we call it the 10,000. And that event actually still exists now, kind of under the control of Freeport Bicycle Company and Comrade Cycles. And so I think everybody should come out and do that event. It's fantastic.
So it sounds like when you guys were creating those events, you also formed kind of a nonprofit organization. Can you talk a little bit about, why form it and what its function was?
You bet. Yep. So I can't remember exactly the years. They all kind of run together. But one of the first years of the Gravel Metric, we had torrential rain, terrible flash flooding, lightning, the whole deal. There's some amazing footage on YouTube of people walking their bikes in what looks like a river, but it's actually a flooded road that flooded in minutes. It was incredible to see. Land run last year. Yeah. We actually had a woman get washed away. It was this tiny little creek that's normally ankle deep was hip deep and raging. And so this woman was kind of crossing with her bike over her head and actually got washed downstream. Somebody had to rescue her with a branch. Anyway, we get to I'm coming into the finish line, and I'm sure the police are going to be waiting for me, and someone's got hit by lightning or something. And I write this recap about the event, and a good friend of mine, Dean Frieders, comes up to me and says, you can't talk like that. You don't have any legal protection. You're going to get sued. And so we started working together, and he and I and a few other people founded Axle Tree. And so Axle Tree, our tagline was events, advocacy, and awesome. And so one part was kind of the legal shield, the liability shield for our events. The other piece was just having a neutral banner to go to the community to kind of have a different voice for improving bike infrastructure and getting involved in other parts of the community. And then just having a neutral flag for riders to ride under. I was never comfortable with people kind of wearing our logo on their jersey, like, oh, I do my business there. That's the team I ride for. That never really sat well with me. And so having a neutral team or group or collection of people was a lot more agreeable. So that was Axle Tree. And I really enjoyed that process. For me professionally, it was fun to work on branding Axle Tree, creating the different identities around the different events. And so it was really, I felt really lucky that I had such an amazing staff at the bike shop that I could afford the time to work on Axle Tree. And then I had some amazing friends that contributed a lot of time and energy to making those events happen. And it could not have happened without all those great people. Right.
So we're kind of, it sounds as if like the bike industry is in a funny state, especially lots of bike shops. Like how essential do you think it is for a bike shop to kind of partake in this community building?
That's a great question. I think it's essential. I don't think it's an option anymore. I mean, shops, we're at such an interesting stage in the evolution. I think we're seeing a lot of growing pains as people are kind of seeing the industry change. And if you're not adding value to the products that you sell, you're just a commodity shop. And the internet can do that better and faster and cheaper. And so consumers just aren't really going to be, they don't want to listen to a story that isn't good. And so unless you're doing good in the community, unless you're rallying people together, unless you're building relationships with your customers, I don't think that kind of the old model of the bike shop is sustainable. I think it's really crucial that you're creating a space for people to gather. This idea of, in the presentation, we talked about this idea of a third space, whether it be a coffee shop or a church or a YMCA or a gym or something like that. People are looking for that third space that's not work and not home to gather, to find community. And bike shops have immense potential to be those places. If you ever stop and think about it, there are very few products that rally people together like bikes. They're an incredible vehicle for community. You don't see people gathering around at vacuum cleaner stores like that. Bikes have this amazing ability. And I think ultimately that's what's kept me really enamored with the bike industry for so long, is that it is an incredible vehicle for community. And so I think it's essential. I think people need to be hosting not necessarily big events, but just opportunities for people to gather. And I think that calls bike shops to have a different type of voice, a different type of leadership. I think that kind of work is very, what I call, emotionally expensive. It takes a different type of character to lead a shop like that. And not all shops are going to be like that. And one of the things we encouraged in the seminar is, if you're not that person, get out of the way. If you're super passionate about bikes and you love talking about bikes, but you don't like dealing with people and you don't like, leading group rides, that's cool. That's fine. Just get in the back, get out of the way, and hire somebody that's nicer than you to run the shop. And so I just think that we're seeing how the market is moving around kind of the old model of the bike shop. And I think we're learning what the bike shop of the future will look like. I'm excited for that. It's interesting. It's fascinating to sit back and watch. It's not easy. It's hard for bike shops these days. But I think that a lot of people are doing some interesting things and kind of unmooring from the old ideas of, this is what a brick and mortar shop looks like. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. This is what we sell. This is what we don't sell. And I feel really fortunate to have been on the front lines for the 11 some years that I was, because I saw it really transform. When I started, we had the paper catalogs. It's so funny. This is not that long ago. But like in 2004, 2005, we literally did have the catalog, and we had customer catalogs because the stuff in the catalogs was not on the internet.
Right.
And so if people wanted to see and know what was coming and what was available, they had to come to the shop. And it's just mind blowing to think about. This is not that long ago. And then just in front of my eyes, we saw that change, where all of a sudden we weren't the gatekeepers of the information. We weren't the only place to get the stuff. And we had to adapt. We had to give people a better reason to come and do business with us. And I think there are still a lot of shops that are kind of holding on to the old way, they're kind of projecting some kind of moral right and wrong way to do business. And I think we're all learning, and we're realizing that a consumer making a wise business choice, a wise financial choice to buy something at a lesser price is not a bad person. We do it, every day. But if they do that in the store, they're Satan incarnate. Look up Amazon in the store, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing you could possibly do. But in reality, everybody's trying to save a buck, and that's not bad. And so I think it's calling bike shops to rise to the occasion, to add value, to offer more, and to be flexible. And if they're not doing that, I fear that they're just not going to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, with the internet and price transparency, like the value proposition of a bike shop has changed. It's not, you're no longer a purveyor of goods because that's the internet. So there has to be like another kind of reason someone wants to, step through the doors of your shop and return multiple times.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And I think you had an article last year or 2 years ago about bike shops being outfitters. And I thought that was fantastic. Because really they have to be curators of the experience, and I think, a lot of the stuff that I focus on nowadays is curating the experience after the sale. After someone comes in and gets the bike they need and we kind of send them out the door, let's make sure that they have a great experience. And that is your job at the bike shop. That's not extra. That's not bonus. That's part of the deal. And I think there's just, I think people are finding new ways to add value to, either have a coffee shop or have a couple taps in the store, and it's exciting. I think we have to be doing those things. Yeah.
I think from my perspective as like consumer, I can only play like armchair bike shop owner, but I feel like there's lots of things like the community building that added value that doesn't necessarily lead to a direct sale at the register, but has like kind of more value and tangible benefits down the road. And I feel like for many shops, if it doesn't convert into a sale then and there, then it's like, well, why am I doing this?
Right. Yeah. Oh, it didn't work. That didn't make the sale happen. Yeah. In the presentation with Bobby, we talked about, we talked about the customer timeline is a lot longer than it used to be. If you're not building those relationships, you're not going to have any chance on that timeline. Whereas if you miss the sale today, you might get one in a week or a year. And so it's just important to be fostering those relationships, keeping up those relationships, and not just, kind of writing them off because you missed one sale.
Yeah. So if you were like knowing what you know now, and you had the notion to start a bike shop, how would it be different from how you would have started a bike shop 15 years ago? Like what would be that core that you would build around?
That's a fun question. I do think about this a lot. And it's fun because I know I don't have to do it right now. So it's a fun fantasy project. But I think there's a lot of potential in just focusing on creating a space for people to belong. And cycling is a piece of that, but it's not the center. Even before I got into bikes, I always thought that I would run some kind of coffee shop or hostel or something like that. And I think the model that I would pursue would be something like ironically, I think it'd be kind of exclusive. It would be a subscription style bike shop where there's a number of services that we would offer. We'd have space that's modular, meaning, there might be a gym space that could also be used for yoga, that could also be used for concerts or art shows or, whatever it is. And then we would have cycling products, but I would do the retail aspect a little different. I think that, I would invite brands to come and be a part of that for a short amount of time, almost like hosting pop-ups, where we would invite brands to come in and build out part of the shop for a part of the year. And then in 6-8 months, we'd switch to a different pop-up that would give people an opportunity, to come in and see something different. And I was very restless at NCC. I was always re-merchandising and reorganizing because I wanted people. I was bored because I was in there all day, every day. But I think even my customers, you wanted to surprise them when they came in. But if the store always looks the same and you don't need anything, then there's no reason to go back in.
That's true. That's kind of a neat idea, like to kind of treat it almost like a museum space with like kind of like a moving curated, kind of show or something. Yeah. And then have, something like coffee or beer or a cafe or something. Because, people don't need bikes every day, but they need coffee every single day, if that's the truth.
So, having that kind of like day-to-day business as a foundation, but then having a curated selection of products on top of that. And then I think another piece of that would be kind of communication, having clinics. I mean, it's very common in bike shops to have regular clinics, and that's fantastic. And then just have a few adventures per year, go out bike fishing, bike camping, and do some longer rides together. So that's my like dream scenario, and it exists only in my dreams. I'm sure there's somebody hearing this that's like, yeah, imagine how much money you'd waste doing that. But I don't have to. It's just a dream.
Right. If only someone created a video game called Sim Bike Shop or something.
Exactly. That would be my sim bike shop. Yep.
Have you been to?
I would have Bobby with.
Yeah. Have you been to Métier in Seattle?
I have not. That's actually a relationship that I have through Black River that they're on my list, top of the list. And I think a lot of what I just mentioned is what they're already doing. That space looks amazing. Their brand is amazing. Their storytelling is amazing. And they just look like they're just
it's pretty, it's
always doing something.
Yeah, I forget, we stumbled in there somehow, and I was like, whoa, this is like no other bike shop. I mean, because it felt like a all-inclusive bike spa. I mean, they had nice showers. There's a training center. There's like a dedicated like place to do workouts. I think they had like a Zwift station. So you could literally like spend the whole day there, like get your coffee, do a workout, hang out, and it was like a little bike retreat in the middle of the city.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. It sounds incredible. And what's brilliant about that is that most bike shops cross their fingers and hope they get a customer to come in 3-4 times a year and spend money, and they're getting customers to come in and spend money 3-4 times a day. That is amazing. And I think that the neatest part of their story is that the bike shop came, I think if I'm remembering this correctly, the bike shop came last. That was the last piece of that puzzle that came together. And I could be wrong there, but they had all these other things going on, and the bike shop just kind of fit into the whole picture. And I kind of love that, because we usually do it the other way. We start with the bike shop and build on.
Right. So let's say for a bike shop that is considering becoming more of a third space and branching out, what's like one or two easy things that they could like actuate right away to move in that direction?
Yeah. In our presentation, Bobby talks about his couch and how the couch in District Bicycles was the first major purchase they made after they got their space, because that was their cornerstone. That was the gathering spot. And he tells a story about a friend of his saying, "Oh, that'll be gone as soon as that floor space is needed for some product." And he said, "No way, never." And at NCC, we had a similar experience at our bar. We had in front of our service area, we had the glass cases, the glass caskets, where you put stuff in and the merchandise just dies in there. So people would always come in and lean their bike on the glass, and it'd make all this noise and make people uncomfortable. And so we decided to get that out of there, and we put in a bar with some bar stools and some nice lights, and just made it a comfortable place for people to hang out. And that was kind of a turning point, because all of a sudden they were welcome. People were welcome to come hang out, and it was always amazing when people would bring in a sack lunch and sit down and have lunch at the bike shop, because that was their safe place. Or they would come in on the way home and, we'd give them a coffee or a beer or something. And so creating an actual space for people to be where they're not in the way, where they feel comfortable, where they feel a part of the community is a really simple way to do that. And I know that both in Stillwater and in DeKalb, we were lucky because we had space. Space is cheap in places like that. That's not true for everywhere, but I think having a space for people to stand where they don't feel like they're in the way, or sit or have a hammock. We had hammocks. Hammocks were nice. A place for people to hang out. And so that's one easy way. And then give actually set a time for people to come and be at the shop with little or nothing to accomplish.
Yeah.
So having a happy hour, having maybe a little casual group ride that you meet at 4 but you ride at 5 or something like that. And give people the opportunity to come in and start establishing their own relationships, kind of under the umbrella of the bike shop, and that way you don't always have to be the MC if you're the manager or the owner. So that's a couple ways.
Cool. Yeah, we're so we live in Missoula, and there's actually a fair number of bike shops. None of them are kind of this new wave bike shop, but my friend Toffer and I were trying to plant an inception with a particular bike shop, because they've got the space, they've got the location, but there's no programming, and we're kind of offering to give us a little free reign this summer just to kind of program the space like once a month. So
that's brilliant.
Hopefully we can. And it's funny, is we were Topher and I were talking, and like the first thing that we thought of was like, they need a couch.
Oh yeah.
Just like some place where people can gather and don't feel like pressured that they can only be there if they're going to buy something, but kind of just be in the space. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And in the moment, and I would encourage you to do that. Push hard for that, because that'll go a long way. The thing to remember, though, is that day to day, it's not going to feel, or month to month, it's not going to feel like a lot is changing. And I'll tell you that for 10 years, I felt like I was wasting a lot of time and a lot of heart, just constantly trying to figure out new ways to get people to come to the shop and participate in what we were doing. And all those little efforts, I think, really add up, but it takes incredible patience.
Right.
And I didn't always have that patience, but in hindsight, I can look back and say, wow, like all those little efforts did add up. And we don't all have, the energy of Bobby Wintle to just go out and hug every single person in the world every day.
Right.
And so it gets tiring. And I think the idea is just, this leads to one of the other major points of the conversation we had at Frostbike, was the entire bike industry needs to go take a nap. I mean, everybody is exhausted. And because of that, they're grumpy and they're short-tempered and they're cynical, and that's a downward spiral. And so when you do those things that are, you add a couch and you host group rides and you do the happy hour. And I mean, those things they're fun sometimes, but they're work sometimes. And you just have to kind of have the long game in mind, and get what you need, take a nap, take the day off, go for a ride,
right.
Have some fun. And of all the things that we encouraged people to do at Frostbike, I think that was the most well received.
Yeah, bike shop siesta.
Exactly. I always found it strange that bike shops are open the exact same hours that people are in work. And so we should, again, it's easy for me to say because I'm not running a bike shop right now.
Right. But if you had your sim bike shop.
Yeah. Or a split shift, where it's like we don't open till 2 p.m. and we have like day staff, night staff, and stuff like that, where we're actually making the services available when people need them, not when it's convenient.
Right.
Again, easy to say.
Yeah.
Not easy to do.
Cool. Well, let's talk about what you're doing now. So you're chief of story at Black River. So for those that aren't familiar with Black River, can you tell us a little bit about it? You bet. So a few years ago, I met Eric Lynn, the founder of Black River, and he was working on this project that was a kind of a story-forward route sharing platform. And as a bike shop, I was always struggling to take, my registration website and my routing website and my blog and my Facebook and try to get all this information into one place. And when I saw what Black River was going to be, it sparked my interest, and I was excited to be a part of it because it was going to build tools for bike shops and tourism boards and cafes to
rally people together and ride together and share routes kind of in a more natural way. And so we call it a story forward route sharing platform because we have an emphasis on sharing the anecdotes and the pictures and kind of like a blogging platform within the route sharing. So you can find routes, but you don't just see the line on the map. You see pictures, you read stories, and these are from other riders or they're curated by bike shops or brands. And so I was really interested in that idea. And so in the summer of 2015 is when I moved up to Madison to join with Eric, and we launched our beta product about 1.5 years ago. And so we've had a beta product live, learning from that. It's just the two of us. It's totally different than running a bike shop, but it's been a fun adventure. And we're really excited. We've kind of been head down for the last 6 months working on a new release for this summer. And so that'll be kind of exiting the beta phase and into kind of the next level. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, that's Black River.
Yeah, I definitely think like a tool like that is needed for bike shops, because even like in my own experience, like we have a half a dozen bike shops here in Missoula. And when we first moved here, I went to like each one and asked them, well, where should I ride? And they explained some amazing route. And I'd say, well, is that online? They're like, no. I was like, you guys don't have anything? Like, I'm supposed to like draw on a napkin. And again, there's like that gap from, buying the product and then like having, set route to actually use it. Because buying is just like the first step. Like I remember talking with to Chris from Topanga, and I was like, well, what's the biggest challenge with bike packing? You guys look like you sell a lot of bike packing stuff. He's like, well, everyone can buy the gear, but there's like still that unknown. Like, okay, I have the gear. That's the easy part. Like, what do I do with it after? And there's no one's really filling that gap well. So
yeah, and that's true. That's true across the board in every category. Especially new riders who are just picking up their first good bike. They kind of leave the store, and it's like we send them out into the wild and hope they don't ride the wrong direction on the highway or something. And so with Black River, what we've done is tried to make that process really smooth. And so when a bike shop has a library of routes, we make it really simple to export these things called ride cards that can hang on the bike. And it could be, this is a great 20-mile road ride or 5-mile, family ride or something. And on that card, it's a little QR code, and you can scan it with our app and immediately navigate using your phone. And for most of the world, that's not an issue. For bike snobs, we would never be caught dead with our phone on our handlebars. But for people that are just getting into it, it's a great solution. It's right there. It's the phone that I have. I don't have to buy anything else. The app is free. And so it's really sending the customer out to have a great first experience so that bike doesn't end up hanging in the garage. You don't want them to go out and, have a terrible first experience on that new bike and get discouraged. And so, sending customers out with a couple great routes is not just, again, it's not just extra credit. It's part of the job, because you want to curate and steward that experience once they leave the store. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they'll be excited and come back in. That's the idea.
Right.
And we also have some pretty neat technology that offers the ability to have route challenges. So we can say, hey, everybody, this is a 20-mile route for this month. Everybody that does this exact route can come into the store and pick up a water bottle or a coffee or a high five or something. Mm-hmm. And so people can find that challenge. They can join the challenge. They can go ride it. As soon as they ride it, they get a cool little pop-up that says, congratulations, stop in the bike shop, pick up your water bottle. And I like that because it kind of mixes it up a little bit. Everybody's going to ride on Saturday. Let's see if there's any local challenge. Oh, cool. Let's go do this, and let's go visit the bike shop for a beer or something.
Right.
So I like that idea of kind of stirring it up a little bit.
Yeah. I think that might be my most favorite feature about Black River is this challenge, because, like in, Strava, you get like a virtual KOM, or on Zwift, you get like a virtual thumbs up. It's cool to kind of, do a ride and have like something, appear in reality, like just some like little kind of celebration of the ride or something that's not, just a virtual badge.
Right. Right. Yeah. We're excited about it. And again, with the release this summer, you'll see a lot of improvements to that, and improvements across the board with user interface and more features. And I can't wait. That's going to be a lot of fun.
So what's the main value proposition of Black River as opposed to like Strava or Ride with GPS? Like, how do you guys differentiate?
We hope to be creating a little bit more community in the real world. So connecting riders to retailers and brands through experiences. So retailers we all know that retailers have in their heads all the best routes. And so we want to be the place where you can go and really easily find a route. You don't have to navigate through a lot of different numbers. It's not about how fast you're going. It's really, like I said, story forward, community forward. And really trying to build kind of a neutral universe that's not competitive, that will bring people together. Some of the new features will make it much easier to find group rides in your area, and so you can connect with other riders that are like you without feeling, intimidating. Joining a group ride is this massive first kind of big step for a lot of riders, and if you can actually see who else is going to be there, maybe some of them, you can see how fast or how slow they are. It'll lower that barrier.
I still get that. Like, I've been riding for a long, decent amount of time. I still get like group ride anxiety. It's like, because you never know what the dynamics are. Like, is someone going to drop the hammer and see you at the end or what?
Yeah. And I think that I'm advocating strongly to have, speaking to those fears, this is the average speed of the group. This is where we go for a beer afterwards, and encouraging people to kind of tell the whole story. This is how we behave at stop signs. This is what our ethos is. It's a drop or a no drop. And trying to just, again, lower the barrier so people can find their people, they can find their community, eat more easily.
Mm-hmm. We'll wrap up on this one last question. Like, are there any bike trends or trends in the bike industry that you see and are excited about?
It's been really fun to get off the front lines and kind of fall in love with bikes again. I'm excited that kind of all the unique fun stuff that we used to see at NABS is kind of trickling down to everyday bikes. And I'm excited. Well, I know you're asking for a product. I think I'm answering with a cultural trend that I appreciate, which is I think it's exciting to see how the industry is starting to talk to normal people all the time. And the trends are appealing to wider audiences. They're making bikes accessible. They're making even, gravel and adventure is now, being sold right alongside hybrid or road or mountain. It's the niches kind of expanding to become more available to more people. And I think that's refreshing. That's exciting. It's not just race culture. It's not just about buying the lightest and the fastest thing. And kind of the heroes and the celebrities of the bike culture are changing. And that's been fun. But I really enjoy seeing brands tell different stories now, speaking to a wider audience, and kind of not just speaking to a very small demographic, very small group of people, and catering to people of, every different market segment. I appreciate that a lot. So I appreciate the trend that storytelling is becoming an integral part of how people talk about bikes. And it's not just what it weighs or what it costs or, what color it comes in.
Yeah, what's been instructive for me is, Laura and I recently got into running. So aside from visiting every bike shop we pass by, we also go into running stores. And I think running does a really good job at speaking to kind of that beginner, intermediate, just fun run. You don't go into a running store and they're not trying to, make you run like a 4-hour marathon right off the bat, or, do an ultra trail running event. But a lot of bike shops, I mean, that would be the equivalent, but they're like, oh, come do the 3K, 5K, go at your own pace, walk half of it if you want to. And I feel like there's so much the bike industry, in terms of speaking to like the beginner or the amateur, can learn from, how other sports approach it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that, kind of to bring it full circle, I think that was one of the things that made us unique in Illinois at NCC was when I was hired, I didn't know anything. And so customers coming in the door knew more than me. And so it just became our culture to say, someone come in with a question and I would come around the counter and say, I don't know the answer to that. Let's figure that out together. I'm as new as you are. And even though I learned things over time and became, knowledgeable in the field, it was still part of our ethos to say, hey, we're all at the same, like, meeting people where they're at. We're all going to do this together. Let's get you started with this thing. Let's not say, hey, you want to go be this, super fast racer. And every time someone came in, they'd be like, well, I'm not one of those big cyclers, I'm not one of those big racers or whatever. And that was the standard. Like, that's what people thought they had to adhere to or rise to. And in reality, it was just like, no, like, let's go for a 5-mile ride at whatever pace. And that's where we start. That's fun. And I think that's more common now, and the shops that are really seeing success are embracing new riders and just lowering the barriers to entry to cycling.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, let's wrap up on that note. Thanks again, Tobie, for joining us. And if you guys have any other questions for Tobie, leave those in the comments below. I'll try to get them to answer them. And if you like the video, like, share, subscribe. And thanks again, Tobie.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks a ton, Russ.
Cool.
See you later.
Right. Thanks again for joining us with this episode of PLP Talks. And if you're listening to this in podcast form, if you could do me a quick favor and just go to your podcast app of choice and leave a rating and a review. It really helps the show out, brings it visibility. I can attract more sponsors and keep this show going. So once again, thanks for listening with us today. And until next time, keep the supple side down.